It's 9 o'clock. We'll call the meeting to recording. All right, we'll call the meeting to order. First up, if we have any, Kayla didn't sit out any minutes, right?
No.
Okay, so we don't have any minutes to approve. Our 4 priority bylaws, because Randy's not here, I guess the first thing, and Kayla's not, I'm sorry, Kayla's not here, Randy's not here, and Jessica, we need to appoint a temporary secretary. Anybody want to volunteer to take notes?
I'm already doing it. I can.
Okay, very good.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Exactly. Thank you.
And
Really thank you.
Yes, really, thank you.
Really thank you. Yeah.
No problem.
yeah,
You don't know what this means to all of us.
That's right. We
Laying
would
it on a little bit.
we would have
all right.
voted for you if you left the room.
Oh, gotcha. Okay.
yeah. So Adam will be taking notes. We should be going over our bylaws. We said we would go over any updates that we had, because a long time ago, we had given out the various assignments. So even though Randy and Jess aren't here, and Kayla, I guess we could still go over what everybody else has. So I guess we might as well start at the beginning. I know different people have different assignments, volunteers. So when we get to one of the ones that are either Jessica or Kayla or Randy, we'll just skip over those. If anybody has anything updates, so I think everybody has a copy of the whole bylaw book. So starting with, I know we already had done some of these, like under Article 2, we had in the let's see, what do you call this one? Actually, that's under 2818, 218. But under general Article 2, Article 3, those are very basic, okay, administrator.
Are you under chapter 1?
Yeah,
Can you just give me 1 second to catch up with you?
sure.
Okay.
Ready?
Yep.
Okay. Under Article 1.5, in fact, we had added the grass clippings. That was actually addressed and put past at the prior town meeting. That was voted on and passed. So that was about blowing grass and clippings into the street. That was something Tim had put words together, and that was done. The other ones were all the basic things. Chapter 6, Administrator. Jessica was doing that one, so we'll skip over Chapter 6. Chapter 7, next one we had was Chapter 11.
Jessica had sent something out, I believe, but I don't know if she returned. Anything else returned?
Yeah, but again, that was Jessica. So we'll leave that one alone. Chapter 17, alcoholic beverages. I don't believe we had assigned that to anybody, but
I don't mind taking that on.
okay.
Actually, you already, according to my notes, you did report on that. You said very rarely enforced, mostly educational or keg seizure.
Yeah.
Okay.
Go back.
What I guess I could do, just for the sake of completion, is I'll rerun through them.
Okay, that's
Report
fine.
back next time through, just to make sure.
Animals, Chapter 24. That's one that we had agreed, and I will put something together. I didn't get a chance to do it for this one, about farm animals,
Chicken.
basically being contained to the property that they're on for the owner or lesser, and not transferring onto somebody else's property. I did happen to ask, we talked about it briefly, I did ask Mike at the town meeting, I says, Mike, if somebody has farm critters, chickens for example, I says, and they're always going off of the property and onto, say, my property, do I have the right to
Shoot them?
to destroy them? And he looked at me, kind of smiled, he says, well, he says, I wouldn't recommend it. He said, probably not. He says, there is a stipulation that if you're a farmer and a critter is destroying or attacking your livestock, you have the right to destroy it. He said, but just because a chicken's coming onto your property and scratching your property and making a mess, he says, I wouldn't, he says, no, I would say that you probably don't have the right to do anything with them. He said, because that could get into a real messy, and I said, I thought so too. I just want to ask them to verify. He says, no, I wouldn't do that. He says, and I told him I was looking to put something about in a bylaw. He said, that would be a good idea. He's that way, if the law said they have to be contained, at least when something occurs, he says, we have the right to go to people and say, or you can call in or whatever it might be, and appropriately make sure things are done with that.
So do they call animal control, or do the police have to handle this?
So what I can tell you is that Mr. Iser was having some difficulties with the
The rooster's
chickens.
got the
Yep.
rooster too.
And so, I sent a notice to the owners of the animals, and if you're taking on animals, I'll just direct you to Mass General Law, Chapter 266, Section 118, domestic animals trespassing on land.
Thank you.
And the fine for violation of MGL 266, Section 118 is a whole $10.
Whoa.
Well, you know, I mean, we could also put it under
We could put it under non-criminal
non-criminal disposition
Yep,
thing.
correct.
And, but that, yeah, that's good.
I think it should be a sliding scale per the weight of the animal.
Okay.
$10 for a
Or
chicken.
amount of animals.
Is it
Yeah.
per chicken?
Yeah, per chicken, per animal, and
I
you
can add
know,
up.
anything under 15 pounds is $10. Anything above
10
that.
bucks a pound?
Yeah.
And this particular
get
chapter and section
I did, 266,
Does-
118.
specifically cover sheep, goats, cattle, horses, swine, or fowl.
Okay,
So pretty much the whole gambit of
Okay.
farm animals.
thank you.
The llamas go in there too?
What's that?
Do the llamas go in there too? 'Cause we have
I would
llamas.
say that they're
Alpacas.
probably similar enough to sheep.
Okay.
Let's see, chapter 36, business establishments, we were looking to do something with this with food trucks. We
Yeah.
did put something forward, we did do that with something, and if I remember that our town attorney recommended that the select board adopt it as a regulation as opposed to a bylaw.
And that was already done. We
Yes.
already had that in place.
Right.
There's also new laws out now under fire regulation for those,
Okay,
which even tightens it up even more.
yeah, I mean, the food truck that is becoming something
They're
quite involved because of all the proliferation of food trucks. I mean, they're all over the place now. Okay,
That's the problem, we've had a lot of accidents with them now. That's why
Yeah.
it really came to the forefront.
yeah,
Improperly piped,
Oh,
propane
okay,
leaking,
yeah.
so.
Chapter 42 was, Dan, I think, gave us something, that's the capital planning committee, and I don't exactly remember.
Could you repeat that, Jim? Could you repeat that?
Oh, chapter 42.
Thank you. No, but what was the
Um,
update there?
That was given to Dan, I think Dan gave us something.
Okay, thank you.
What did Dan do with that one? I've looked back about it, I think he did give us something on that, but it wasn't really any changes to be made.
Yeah.
Okay.
Chapter 49, Community Preservation Committee. I believe we just adopted a whole bunch of changes that are at our last annual town meeting on chapter 49. That was by the actual committee themselves. They recommended a number of smaller changes to that. So that is done. Let's see, chapter 53, constables, that's
Being voted on, right?
being voted on today, the last part of it. Pass or fail, that will be done. I would expect to pass. Chapter 68, elections and meetings, I don't think we really need to do anything with that one.
Meaning we've reviewed it already, or
But that is something that is ongoing, that is basically setting up, when town meetings are, when town elections are, the voting hours and stuff like that, those are, the quorum, that's something really, they tried to, they have made some changes to that. They tried to reduce, just a little bit of history for you, I don't know how many years ago, they tried to, because there was some difficulty on getting enough people to a
Quorum.
special town meeting, they tried to reduce the quorum from 100 members to 50 members.
okay.
And that did not go well. That was really voted down because if they can't get 100 members, and the idea was, then it's probably not worthwhile having it, bottom line.
Sure.
And 50 people to decide fate of the town is
Not
pretty
good.
low. I mean, it's not, even 100 is low, but
100 is
at least
low.
that's a reasonable number. Okay, that one's done. Chapter 75, farming. I have Jessica on that one. She did quite a bit to look at. But a lot of those probably will not require much of anything. Let's see, then we had chapter 80, fees for various things.
Jess and I were looking at those. Jess and I were looking at those.
Yep, okay. Yeah, because that really has to do with fire. The second article too was a lot to do with flammable liquids and stuff like that, and the fee licenses in chapter article 1 is all about the different fees that the town clerk charges for items. And last time it was updated was 15 years ago. So, might be time to change some fees for that. She'll get back, let them look at it.
So just so you know, I just looked through my notes. Chapter 68, you had, it was determined there were going to be no changes.
Okay. Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. Chapter 86, taxation. Let's see.
Tax bills had to be modified.
The wording of tax bills 86-3, we're at the end of, one of the final
86-1, or,
Yeah.
3, thank you.
86-1, 86-3, and 86-6.
Okay.
We did get some recommendations from the town collector,
Rewritten.
but we were figuring at the end, we'll just have one list at a town meeting, unless it becomes extremely long, that we would just adopt various changes, but 86-6 is recommended, per request of town collector, they will change A and B.
And you also had Amy Fiden, so I don't know if all of you want to look at it, but she discussed items under Article 5 for revolving funds.
Okay,
COV began to change from 3,000 to 5,000. She had made some recommendations, so I don't know if you want to
Okay.
revisit that.
So who was gonna make those changes to 83-3 and 86-6? Was that assigned to somebody?
we already got recommendations from the town collector on 86-6.
Okay.
I've got a thing right here. Amy was gonna look at
Article 5.
Article 5, and we already have a recommended change, I think, from Jessica
Yep.
on 86-3 on tax bills, or maybe that was from,
Nope, that's correct.
that's
And-
from Amy.
And you had in accordance with, you had added in accordance with MGL Chapter 60. You had
Right.
added.
Yep.
Okay, so does Amy know she needs to get back to us on?
You would have to, Amy's no longer on the committee, so.
She's
Right, but like-
on, but I'll talk to Amy.
But,
and find
okay,
out.
and that's
'Cause
what
I
I-
know that some of these, I know we were, which ones? We made a few changes, I think, at town meeting, didn't we, on,
You may have.
yeah, I
She
think
had
there was.
specifically said the council on aging. did.
Yeah, right, and I remember we changed that
Yeah.
one. I don't remember what we did, but there were some changes there, so I'll ask Amy.
All right. Yeah, I just want to make sure that like we know who's working on something or if they need to
Okay.
be made aware of something.
Yeah,
Okay.
Well, you can hand that back, why don't you put me down?
Sure.
And
Okay.
then I'll talk to Amy and just get the background and.
Okay.
Yeah, 'cause
Agree or disagree.
There's a bunch of wording, and I've got notes on sealers of weights and measures. There's a note on here about removing that one entirely, and council on aging van, $5,000 request, I've got 524. Was that in the town? Jessica would have to look, we gotta ask Jessica on some of these, if we adopted them or not, because I don't remember.
And you said she had already made changes to 86.3? Jess did?
I'm not sure.
I don't
Okay.
I think she recommended the
Yeah.
changes, but I
Oh,
don't
I
know
see.
that we've actually adopted it.
Okay.
I think she had researched it, and the recommendation was to add this language for 86-3.
Right,
Yeah, in accordance with Mass General Law, Chapter
Right.
60.
right,
Okay.
okay. Chapter 87, Affordable Housing Trust Fund, that was just adopted recently, and there's no changes to be made to that. And we have
20.
Stretch Energy Building Code, Chapter 220.
That was okay as is.
Right.
Sorry.
With it-
I just want to.
Okay.
We went from 87 to 220. Like all the ones in between, those have already been
Although
handled.
there's nothing in between.
Okay.
We are, just for your information, so you understand,
Mm-hmm.
we don't, our general bylaws are not numbered sequentially. There's massive gaps.
Right.
In between for, I guess, in case something wants to get inserted.
In the
it's
middle,
just a place
yeah.
to insert something.
Yeah, because our next one's gonna be Chapter 104.
Oh, wait a
That's
minute.
what
Right. I thought you
Yeah,
just said
before.
220 though, which
Yeah,
skipped.
220, okay, for some reason, in the book,
Which I didn't. It just we skipped several, so I didn't know if those had already been addressed.
And I'm going through the way our sheet is put together,
Okay.
and it goes from 87 to 220, but there's numbers in between, there's sheets in between there. So there is numbers in between
Yeah, there's
87 and 220.
104 is health.
104.
I have
104.
sanitation.
Yeah.
I have Board of
Drinking
Health,
fountain.
Building Commissioner.
That's what I was
Yeah.
wondering about. Just
Yeah.
like, was there a reason? Because online there are, there's a
Yeah.
couple.
Yeah.
It's just the way the book was put together.
Yeah. Oh, that's fine. I kind of figured.
Yeah.
But just for my
Good to
clarity.
check, yeah. See, you should have been, look at those notes.
Well, they're all in a book that somebody stole, i.e. my wife, because she was gonna pull it together.
Yeah. So Jessica was gonna forward to Board of Health and Building Department to see if they had any things on 104.
Okay.
That was me too.
And Tom is not on on this committee anymore, so.
I'll work with Board of Health on that. I was
Okay.
on that list too.
Chapter 110,
Historical.
that's the historical. Don't have anybody who was looking at that, but the Historical Commission is, I think, it just says for next meeting. I don't have what we have on that one
I
there.
have, yeah, I just had, we'll review it next meeting.
Yeah,
I have Tim proposes that select board put together requirements and was allowed in the bylaw for something.
Okay.
Oh, for the boards and, we were talking about how we're gonna have all these boards and commissions meeting their requirements.
Oh, okay.
You reported that town council used to come in and discuss with communities, or with committees, so we could do a Zoom or a YouTube to make sure they understand what they're supposed to do.
Because we used to do that all the time, every year.
Yeah,
Town council came in and discussed what each commission could or could not do and what they were required to do. And now that doesn't happen.
chapter 162, peace and good order. I got a note on here, chapter 162-3, noise.
Yeah,
And-
This is the hope and prayer.
Sorry, just to confirm for 110, there were no changes needed for that.
Right, that's the historical commission, and we should forward, I've got to get it forward to the historical commission to see if they have anything they want to change on that.
Okay, so you'll
But
follow.
really, yes,
So you'll follow up with them,
I'll
Jim?
forward it. It's
Okay.
only, right now, the historical commission, chapter 110 has one little paragraph, and everything refers to Mass General Laws, chapter 40, section 8D.
Mm-hmm.
And
It's just establishment.
that's the establishment and their duties,
Yep.
so,
And probably no changes.
yeah, I would guess no changes,
Yeah,
but.
just making sure.
All right.
So 162?
When we're on 162, peace and good order, 162-3 reference, I know that one, I've got a reference on here about the noise. You need more paper than I need?
Just in case you wanted it.
Thank you,
we had talked at great length about noise,
yes.
and we had talked about the current wording of the bylaw in great depth. We had considered adding a level of decibels that was enforceable, and the conversation is, as I recall it, we talked about having to have specialized equipment in order
Yeah.
to read decibels.
Yeah,
And I think it was our suggestion from the police department side that the current language, it somewhat allows for the officer to have discretion
Yes.
as to what was reasonable and unreasonable. And I think that even more so now with the department wearing body cameras, it is a whole lot easier to go back, and if we issue someone a citation for unlawful noise, we can very easily go back and show to anyone who,
you guys wear body cameras now?
yes,
Oh, really?
for a number of years now, since 2020.
Wow, okay.
So,
And it's worked
Yeah,
well.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah,
using decibel as an enforcement is a great idea in theory.
yes,
But to enforce it, because you gotta be, I don't know what the right word is for a person, there's a noise person, you gotta be all kind of certified with it.
Well,
Yes.
yeah, you have to bring in DEP. I've done this in other states for companies that I've worked for that had factories that were being accused of making too much noise. They put in, like air handling systems, and all of a sudden the neighborhood's up in arms, says, oh, they can hear it at 2 a.m. So we'd go out in the middle of the night with these,
Meters.
Meters. Sorry. Should turn that off. You go out with meters and they all had to be certified, and, that we'd always have a DEP person there, and,
Yeah. I
certain
remember-
distance away.
so I think it would be, we don't really have any factories, like, we don't have industrial
Yeah.
stuff that would create that, but that would be, in my mind, the only thing where you'd want to elevate it to that level, but just by the fact that we don't have it in there doesn't mean it couldn't be used at some point. But we might want to establish a decibel level maximum that wouldn't necessarily be applied to music, because you don't have the unit to tell it, but that way you have something in the code. So suppose somebody does put in some particularly noisy system at a house or a business that's, some type of air handler that's just squealing, then you'd have an ability to enforce to actually enforce, but that would be the only thing you might want to look at.
Mainly our enforcement of noise bylaw has historically been house parties,
Yeah.
and college
Oh,
parties.
I get
And, the most recent incidents of noise complaints has really been from, you know, not to name names, but a particular venue
Yep.
south of town.
Yeah, I
And-
came over at my house the other day.
Really, it's not necessarily about decibels. There's a lot
No.
more that goes into it.
Yeah,
I mean, it
no, I
seems like
understand.
duration is a big part of it too.
Right.
Like,
Duration.
Yeah.
It's not just how loud it is; it's how long it's going on.
Right.
And certain decibels, how sharp is it? There's all over,
Right.
because I remember this goes back to when Hooker School was in session, was still there. And I got what the business was applying for something, and people were all concerned about noise. And they said something about, well, we should have 0 decibels. And I said, that's impossible. I says, and we continued the hearing. I came into the next meeting with a decibel meter. And I wanted to explain to people, because most people don't understand what decibels means. It's a complicated gizmo, I'll leave it at that. Anyway, so we're sitting in the meeting, and I said 0 decibels is almost impossible to achieve. All right, so I'm gonna give you an example. We sat in a room like this with the fluorescent lights on. I said, okay, now nobody make a sound. So we were dead quiet for about 30 seconds. The decibel meter is reading like 35 or 40. I says, it's perfectly quiet. The noise you hear is the hum of the fluorescent lights. I says, and it's reading, and I showed it right on the camera because we're on TV. I says, it's like 35 or 40, I don't remember the exact number. I says, it's quiet in here, but it's noisy according to this. I says, so 0 decibels, I says,
It's
maybe if
impossible.
you're in a soundproof booth, maybe, but I said, I'm not even sure there is 0.
Yeah.
And I said, it's not something that we want to put into the approval of this bylaw, of this particular company that's applying for something. I says, because it's a very complicated gizmo. I says, although it sounds good to do this, I says, a decibel reading, you've got to specify a certain height above the ground, so many, I says, a decibel reading 2 feet above the ground can be different than 10 feet above the ground, or 6 feet above the ground. He says, it's very complicated to specify something. I said, you just can't say, 80 decibels. I
And the
said,
meter
because
has
there's
to be
all
set.
kinds of,
And traffic could play into it
Oh,
if you're
yeah.
reading a decibel meter.
Yeah.
so I said, it's a complicated thing. So I don't mean to.
So
to
it
belittle this,
sounds
but I
like
said-
where we're landing is right now the language allows for police discretion. We want to retain that, but we're not at this point. We're not establishing a maximum
No.
decibel level or amount of time.
Yeah,
Nope.
Okay.
for the most
Just
part, I
gonna
mean,
leave it as is.
except for, like, you said venues or certain parties, most of the time noise hasn't been a problem. And to your point, like you just said, Adam, certain frequencies, a high frequency pitches sometimes can be a lot more annoying
Than
than a
something
lower
loud.
noise that could be louder. It's just leave it alone.
Well, lows
Okay.
and highs are the
Yeah.
worst.
So we're leaving as is for now.
Okay for now.
Okay.
And it can always be looked at if it comes up in the future. Police Department, 174, chapter.
I had Mitch on that.
I was gonna ask who was doing that one. Yeah.
It seems like a conflict of interest.
Maybe a little.
So the bylaws for the police department, let me just let my phone get into here. Police department.
Here,
Oh, look at that, look at that.
some of us.
Yeah, chapter 174 is generally about the establishment, function, composition
Right.
of the agency itself, and I went through all of these to make sure that they were still relevant and appropriate. Records of person arrested, we do that. Duties of police officers, that's safe. Duties at fires, emergency lines, assistance to other cities and towns. Excusing members from duty, uniforms and vehicles. Those are all fairly standard things that are still in effect to this day.
And the police department has their own rules and regulations that they
Yes, we do.
apply, that we don't need to be part of a bylaw, because those are kind of evergreen changing.
So no changes right now.
174 is good.
Yep.
Chapter 195, sewers, that was last updated 2007, and that is really about, that leaves most of this up to the Department of Public Works, if I'm correct. Now, let's see.
I had Scott McCarthy, you were
Yeah.
getting that thing.
Wait, I didn't hear what you said.
Scott McCarthy. we're
Scott,
gonna
he's
review it.
DPW.
Oh, but he hasn't reviewed it yet.
Not that I'm aware,
Okay.
I can, I'm gonna follow up with him on it.
Yeah, please. Okay. So there's quite a bit on sewers in here. Yeah. Okay. Chapter 209,
I have 209 and 211 is Kayla, and Kayla was gonna be updating. She says it needs updating, Kayla will take a look. It was mostly on the solid waste one, not
Yeah.
the soil removal.
yeah, soil removal is also addressed under the zoning bylaw.
Yeah.
Actually, this actually references the zoning of the planning board for this one. Okay, yeah, chapter 209 is probably good because it references the planning board as issuing a special permit for soil removal. All right,
Okay.
Sounds good.
solid waste, that would be, yeah, that's for sure for Kayla to look at.
Sure.
Chapter 218,
I have fire, building, and DPW to look at. So I gotta get together with Scott. It was, check out section 218-1 for proper language. And you were gonna, Adam, you were gonna look at additional language. That's what I got under that. That's probably that one you and I were supposed to meet on.
Well, I had done something on the sidewalks. There had been some language I had updated, and then there was abandoned vehicles, I think
Right.
was what you and I were going to talk about. I had emailed you about that long time ago, and then I never followed up. So
Yeah, and I never followed up with you either.
okay, well, why don't we connect about that? But I think the sidewalk
Right,
portion
that's the one you
is
have.
all handled.
Oh, it is,
Um,
okay.
I thought so. We had discussed the language. We had, I think, settled on all of it, and I sent it to Jess. So
They were gonna take out invalid.
yeah, we haven't,
Yes.
we haven't changed any language.
right. I guess I thought we had settled on what the changes were going to be, and
Okay.
I had shared that with Jess. So I don't think we need to discuss that part, but the abandoned vehicles, I think, we have not done anything with.
Oh, yeah, we gotta, you're right, okay.
Okay, so I'll connect with Mike on that.
I have to look in the MGL too on that. I haven't had a chance. I think there's some new stuff under
Okay.
fire regulation for
Yeah.
those vehicles, of what number you can store, that kind of stuff like that.
Okay.
Yeah. They're gonna make the influence. Well, the thing was written when.
Yeah,
Doesn't say.
we had made a few changes, obviously to
19.
remove invalid, and just some other changes
Okay.
about like the language had made it a little unclear about like assisted devices, like a scooter or something, like if, you know.
Considering most of this was adopted in 1914,
Yeah.
the words are probably,
A little outdated.
could be a little bit outdated.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, I'll go through him. Chapter 230, trees.
That's supposed to be Scott.
Scott.
So I'll add that to the list.
Okay, 247, traffic. It's basically got to do with abandoned and junked vehicles,
Handicap parking.
handicap parking.
Is that right?
The abandoned vehicles.
No, handicap parking.
Oh, yeah, I think you're right. I think that was on me.
Yeah, I do have that as, you're gonna look at.
Well, I guess that slipped my mind, so I'll get to work on that.
Yeah, that's okay.
I mean, the biggest concern on our end would be just ensuring that the fine schedule is up to today's standards, which it looks like it already is. First offense, 100, second and subsequent, 300.
Okay.
Yeah, and you may want, instead of,
Yeah, change that back to that one.
yeah,
section.
instead of mentioning the violation defined with a dollar number, you just want to, you could easily just reference the non-criminal disposition bylaw. I think that's what they would fall under.
Yeah.
That way, whenever that is addressed, it's updated, it'll automatically update of other fines.
Okay. Sure.
That would be that section and also
And we-
247 and 8. Okay.
247, 4 and 8.
Then chapter 250.
247 4. Okay.
And then it's also needs to change it, 8, 247-8.
Got it. Thank you.
Chapter 255, water. That's probably Scott.
Board of Health.
Yep. and Board of
Scott
Health.
and Board of Health. You gonna,
Yep, I got a list.
A long one.
okay, and chapter 260, wetlands protection.
Caleb's gonna
Caleb.
move.
And the rest, then after that, it's the zone, okay, the zone bylaw is not part of this. That's it.
Okay.
All right, we've got enough assignments for everybody here.
Yeah.
Can I report back on chapter 17 alcoholic beverages?
Sure.
Already.
So, going back what the fire chief said, I went back and reviewed chapter 17, and it appears as though those are all where they should be. They're generally used for educational purposes, rarely enforced. The non-criminal disposition is in there for language, so we can enforce up to $300.
Okay.
And I would say chapter 17 is sufficient as is.
Good,
Okay.
thank you.
How has this year been with regard to parties? Kind of a lot less than we've had in the past?
Not really remarkable.
Nothing.
You know, most of the parties we have are on the midnight shift, and it's not like it was in the
good.
early to mid 2000s by any means.
No more 300 people.
Well, the biggest thing is that the university imposes disciplinary action for behavior in the community.
Good.
So we have an avenue to be able to report that conduct to the university, and they can be thrown out of school.
That's bad. That's tough.
Yep.
Can you imagine?
Yeah, well, I look back when we were in college, I was going to UMass in the heyday of the ZooMass period. And it was, of course, the drinking age had just been lowered to 9 to 18.
Yep.
So you had a combination of things, of everything, and the biggest one was the lowering of drinking age, so you now had vast, at least 50% of the students coming into UMass as freshmen were legal drinking age.
And high school kids coming from town.
And then now, and the biggest problem they have there is, okay, when they were drinking, it was 21, you had 18-year-olds drinking. Now you've got an 18-year-old drinking, well, legal age, so you've got 15-year-olds drinking. That was,
Well, you're the same age as I am because it changed when we both turned 18.
when the drinking age turned 18, I had just turned
Me too.
19.
Oh, I
Because the
had
drinking,
turned
I remember
18.
the drinking age turned 19 on March 1. Let's see, I was 18 in 72. So in 73, on March 1, 1973, the drinking age turned to 18.
Good old days.
And
When
I
you
remember
turned
going
21.
out and it was, the bars were packed.
And it was 25-cent beers.
Yeah, oh yeah, it was cheap beer. You could go to, there was a place in Happy you could go to Wednesday nights.
Oh, yeah.
$1.50 pitcher of beer. Even then, back then, that was still cheap.
But then when we turned 21, it turned back to 21.
No, it was a little bit later, but it wasn't much longer after that.
Yeah.
Because,
Thirty, I think,
anyway,
yeah, so was that.
and, yeah, it was, Anyway,
Good times.
yeah, it was, no, we're really way off topic.
Yep.
Okay.
Could I just, could I inquire about about our waste in streets bylaw?
Yes.
So
yes,
it's passed, I see it's in the bylaws already,
Yes.
so we got AG approval.
Yes,
So I wanted to just ask everyone to see if they thought that it would apply to runoff. And what I mean by runoff
I
is
know what you mean.
there's a particular address
Yes.
on Rocky Hill Road
That,
where the
Yeah.
driveway runs off into the
the
street.
way the bylaw is written, it probably would not.
Yeah.
Because it's really got to address with me purposely putting waste into the street.
Mhm.
This is kind of a freak act of nature, and it is a poor landscaping deal, design, whatever you want to call it, but it is not being done intentionally to put waste in the street.
But,
Yes. go
But
ahead.
knowingly,
Yes, well, you can, I was gonna say, you can talk, go ahead.
the driveway requirements under DPW stipulates that there shall be no runoff from a driveway onto a public way.
all right.
And then that's enforced by the zoning enforcement officers.
That's
It's
correct.
a separate section. Yeah.
That's where you can deal with that
Yes.
issue.
I imagine with big rainfalls we've had in the last couple of weeks, that's probably been a problem.
It's been a huge problem for a long time.
Yeah.
Now, on that issue, when I was the building commissioner, I did go to court with that bylaw. And I believe everything's been fixed. Unfortunately, that's a regulation that has to be adopted by the select board. I believe it was done correctly, but it's something that needs to be reviewed, because if you do go into court, that's the first thing that they're gonna ask is, was it adopted through the select board? Okay?
And do we know where within the bylaws we're gonna be looking at? Because I guess this is,
That's it's a regulation
It's not a
through,
bylaw.
under the select board.
It's a select board regulation,
okay,
yeah.
And they have to have a public hearing, and I believe it happened, but there has to be a public hearing solely on that regulation for public input. Okay, so again, I can't tell you what date that happened, but I believe it did go through. It needs to be
You
checked.
know how the regulations are done?
yeah, they're approved by the select board. no?
Right, but there's a little process.
Yeah.
A general bylaw or zone bylaw goes to town meeting and is voted on.
Yep,
And you got publication, newspapers, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. A regulation by almost any board in town, Board of Health, Select Board, Planning Board, requires only a public meeting notice in the newspaper, no sending out to any abutters or neighbors unless they requested it to the town clerk. So you advertise it in the newspaper that a public hearing, this thing is going to be conducted, and that particular board or board typically votes to adopt that regulation, and it is therefore done, and it's adopted, and so on and so forth. And I believe the select board has done that for a whole bunch of stuff. If you go to see, what's her name?
Jessica?
Jennifer. Jennifer, go to see Jennifer. She can actually, she'll be able to find out in the regulation and give you the details
Okay.
on what it is and when it was adopted,
All right.
and that it was formally done.
Mitch, also make darn sure that they approved the driveway application, because that was the big hiccup at the time when I was in court over the one driveway. There wasn't anything really down at that time that the application was approved by the select board.
Driveway applications are today approved by the DPW's director.
okay.
What? The driveways?
Driveways are. Curb, I believe it's a, talk to Scott on this one. There's there's driveway designs when it comes to the street, and there's curb cut permissions, one by the Board of, I think the curb cuts might be by the Board of Selectmen, but the driveway design where it comes into the street might want to be reviewed by Scott, because I know when they redid my driveway, they repaved my driveway, they completely tore it out and put a new driveway in 2 years ago, and they actually had to get approval from Scott to do that. Now, it was just a matter of the way it was the company that put the driveway and knew what they had to do. I wasn't even aware of it, so.
And the reason is because of utilities. And that's why, and that, really, that 15 feet from the street to your real front property line is owned by the town. That's why it has to be reviewed.
Got it.
But it's primarily for the utilities. As, remember the one that we had over next to Sam's?
Sam's?
Yeah,
Yeah.
next to them.
Yes.
Remember
Pine
the
Hill?
problem with that?
Yeah. Oh, yeah, I remember.
Because it's a concrete
Yeah.
island now.
Mhm.
And the fire lanes that's not
Right.
complied with, yeah.
Yeah.
So it does get very complicated, and that's why that review is required.
Gotcha. Okay.
So, anyway, okay. Anything else? Questions? Next meeting is, I got June 17th. No meetings in July or August right now. We could always change that on 17th, but I won't be here for the August meeting, and I think you and Jess weren't going to be here for the July one, stuff like that. There was some others that weren't going to be here.
Did not know.
July and August are historically heavily vacation.
Yeah, so that's why we're not going to meet. And where our goal was to be complete with a bylaw committee for the annual town meeting in 2026. In other words, have everything on that agenda. We may have to meet once or twice after that just to formally clean everything up and put it down. But hopefully we'll be done roughly next spring, if you would.
We should.
Which would make us roughly a 5-year committee.
Yeah.
Could I ask you one question?
Absolutely.
I think you might be discussing it tonight maybe, but the ADU stuff, is that on your agenda tonight for a planning board?
I believe it's an open topic for almost every meeting. But let me get the agenda right up here and I'll give you an answer to that.
We don't have any amendments for the fall special town meeting.
Not yet. Come on, here
I guess I should listen to these ADU meetings since I got 2 in design and 3 in Sunderland to deal with. Let 'em happen.
Oh, no, I'm fine. I need to know how I'm gonna get a fire truck to them when they're set a mile and a half back.
Do we
on the
want to
property.
adjourn, do we want to adjourn this meeting?
Yeah.
Yes.
I'll make a
yes,
motion to
yes,
adjourn.
yes. Motion to adjourn this meeting?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes. Meeting is history. Thank you, everyone.